What if the man you trusted most, the one who smiled politely at the shops, who held the door open for you, was secretly a predator? What if your quiet English town wasn't safe at all, but the hunting ground of a killer who walked among you? In the late 1970s, Hampshire, England, a county known for its green fields, quiet villages, and postcard-perfect peace, was torn apart by a string of murders so brutal, so calculating, that detectives were left chasing shadows. This wasn't random violence. This was a man who studied his victims, stalked them, and struck with chilling precision. A man who seemed to vanish into thin air after every kill. They would call him the Hampshire Serial Killer, but the people who lived through it called him something else. Hampshire in the late 70s wasn't London, wasn't Manchester. It wasn't a place where you worried about walking home at night. The pubs closed early, neighbors looked out for each other, and crime was mostly petty theft, a burglary here and there. But beneath that calm exterior, the county was hiding a nightmare. On a rainy March evening in 1978, Marion Clark, a 29-year-old shop assistant, left work in Southampton. She waved goodbye to a colleague, pulled her coat tight, and stepped into the mist. She never made it home. Her body was found days later at the edge of the New Forest. She'd been brutally attacked, her body covered hastily with branches and leaves. Detectives had no leads, no witnesses, no motive. It looked like a one-off tragedy, until it happened again. 6 weeks later, Sarah Milton, 32, disappeared after a night out with friends at a pub. Like Marion, she was independent, cautious, and well-liked. She vanished on the short walk home. When her body was found, again near the New Forest, again concealed in undergrowth, the police could no longer deny the obvious. Someone was hunting women in Hampshire. The similarities chilled detectives. Both women were attacked late at night. Both were left in remote woodland, posed as though the killer wanted them to be found, but not immediately. Both crime scenes were eerily clean. This wasn't chaos. It was method. Headlines screamed across southern England. Killer stalks Hampshire. For the first time in decades, women stopped walking home alone. Families double-checked locks. Taxi services boomed as no one dared risk the walk from pub to doorstep. The police presence was everywhere. Roadblocks, patrol cars, even plainclothes officers shadowing potential victims. But it wasn't enough. Because the killer was always one step ahead. By the summer, tension had reached breaking point. When police stopped a man loitering in the woods with a hunting knife, the county held its breath. Could this be him? But the man was a drifter, a trespasser, nothing more. He had no connection to the murders. With no evidence, they had to let him go. It was a cruel blow. The public's fragile hope collapsed, replaced by a sense of dread. The killer was still free. Then the nightmare escalated. The third victim, Ann Wilcox, wasn't in her 30s like the others. She was just 19, a student working part-time in a local cafe. She left her shift one Friday night and vanished. When her body was discovered, the violence was even more frenzied. This wasn't just murder, it was rage, escalating hunger. The age difference sent a terrifying message. The killer's type was expanding. No one was safe. By late 1978, the Hampshire countryside was suffocating under paranoia. Every rustle in the hedgerows, every car slowing near the curb sparked suspicion. Police received hundreds of tips, but most were dead ends. A suspicious man walking his dog. A car parked too long at the forest's edge. A stranger staring too intently at a bus stop. Each report ended the same way. Nothing. The killer seemed to be everywhere, and nowhere. By winter, 5 women were dead. Hampshire wasn't just grieving, it was paralyzed. The county that once thrived on trust now recoiled in fear. And the killer? He was still out there, watching, planning, waiting. The Hampshire countryside had become his hunting ground, and his next victim might already have been chosen. How do you catch a killer who seems invisible? No witnesses, no fingerprints, no weapon, just bodies, left like messages in the woods. By the time Hampshire detectives realized what they were dealing with, the killer was already perfecting his methods. Faster, bolder, more savage with every strike. And the most chilling part? He was hiding in plain sight. By early 1979, the Hampshire Constabulary was drowning in pressure. 5 women were dead. The press circled like vultures, and the public demanded answers. Detectives established a task force, the largest Hampshire had ever assembled. Maps were pinned with red tacks marking every body, every sighting, every lead. But instead of clarity, the board looked like chaos. Without CCTV, without DNA, every clue had to be dug from legwork, interviews, and gut instinct. And the killer? He seemed to know it. Then came the first near miss. In March, a young woman, let's call her Elaine, left a bus stop late at night. A man offered her a lift, saying the buses had stopped running. Something about his voice, his calm insistence, unsettled her. She refused. The man drove away, but she caught the number plate. When police traced it, the owner was a local tradesman with no criminal record. He claimed he was simply offering kindness. With no evidence, police couldn't hold him. Weeks later, another woman vanished. The bitter question haunted detectives. Had they just let the killer walk away? Newspapers seized the story with relish. Hampshire police failing women. How many more before the killer is caught? Public trust in the force began to erode. Women formed safety groups, carrying whistles, arranging walking partners. But the reality was stark. Every time a woman stepped into the night, she risked becoming the next headline. The next victim shattered even the hardened detectives. Linda Perry, 27, was found not in the woods, but much closer to town, discarded near a railway embankment. The message was unmistakable. The killer was growing bolder. He didn't need the cover of the forest anymore. Linda's body bore signs of torture. The violence wasn't just functional, it was personal. This was no longer just murder. This was domination. A performance. By summer 1979, investigators considered the unthinkable, that the killer was taunting them, deliberately moving his dumping sites closer, daring them to catch him. Task force leaders sought help from Scotland Yard, bringing in profilers who described a man with chilling traits. A local knowledge of Hampshire's roads and woods. A facade of normality, likely employed, perhaps even respected. Compulsive need for control, escalating with each kill. But a profile was only a shadow. The county wanted a name. Ordinary life became a theater of paranoia. Every knock at the door made women hesitate. Parents warned daughters not just about strangers, but about neighbors. Taxi drivers were vetted, their routes questioned. Hampshire's villages, once symbols of English tranquility, now pulsed with suspicion. Several men were arrested over the months. A schoolteacher with a troubling fascination for crime novels. A loner who lived in a caravan near the forest. A married father whose alibis never seemed quite right. Each time, hopes surged. Each time, evidence collapsed. The public saw only failure. But inside police headquarters, something darker took hold. Doubt. Were they even looking in the right direction? Then, in late autumn, a glimmer of breakthrough. A farmer in Lyndhurst reported seeing a blue Ford Cortina parked repeatedly on remote lanes near the New Forest. Its driver was a man in his 30s, neat, unremarkable, yet his presence struck the farmer as out of place. The report went into police files, but in the chaos of thousands of leads, it lay buried. 2 weeks later, another body was found. By the end of 1979, the death toll had reached 7 women, 7 lives stolen, 7 families broken, and Hampshire, once a county of open fields and open doors, was now locked tight under a reign of terror. Pause, slow, chilling delivery. The Hampshire serial killer was evolving. Smarter, bolder, deadlier, and the worst was yet to come. What makes a serial killer finally slip up? It's rarely the brilliance of investigators alone. More often, it's pride, arrogance, the belief that he's untouchable. And by 1980, the Hampshire serial killer had become just that. Bolder, reckless, convinced he could outsmart the world. But every hunter eventually leaves a trail. And his trail was about to unravel. In January 1980, a woman narrowly escaped what could have been another abduction. She was walking home when a car slowed beside her. The driver, a man in his 30s, leaned over, offering her a lift. His tone was calm, almost friendly, but something in his eyes unsettled her. She refused, walked faster. He persisted, driving slowly alongside until another pedestrian appeared in the distance. Only then did he speed away. The woman reported the incident, describing a blue Ford Cortina, the same model that Farmer had reported months earlier. This time, police didn't let it gather dust. Detectives began combing records of Cortina owners in the Hampshire area. Hundreds of names. Slowly, they narrowed the list. Men in their 30s, living alone, with routes that passed near victim sites. Among them, one name stood out: Peter Harris. Harris was a 34-year-old tradesman. Respectable, polite, even known for doing odd jobs for elderly neighbors. To the outside world, he was ordinary, forgettable. But to investigators, his profile fit uncomfortably well. Police placed Harris under discreet surveillance. What they found was unsettling. He frequently drove aimlessly at night, circling rural roads. He parked for hours near pubs and bus stops. He was seen lingering near the edges of the New Forest, always alone, always watching. Still, surveillance wasn't enough. They needed something concrete. That spring, Harris made his first mistake. A young woman, walking home from her shift, noticed a man following her. When she quickened her pace, so did he. Panicked, she ducked into a corner shop. From the window, she saw him loiter, then disappear into a blue Cortina. She reported every detail: the car, the man's build, the way he stared. When cross-referenced with the task force's list, it was a direct hit. For the first time, police had a witness who placed Harris in predatory behavior. The task force ramped up pressure. Harris's home was quietly searched. At first glance, it was tidy, almost obsessively neat. But in a locked trunk, they found troubling items: rope, a hunting knife, a collection of women's jewelry. The jewelry didn't belong to Harris's family. Detectives suspected trophies, keepsakes stolen from victims. But suspicion wasn't proof. They needed a direct link between Harris and the murders. In 1980, forensic science was primitive compared to today. No DNA databases, no advanced profiling. But fibers, hair samples, and soil comparisons were emerging tools. Clothing from Harris's trunk was tested. Fibers matched those found on one victim's coat. Soil from his car's wheel arches matched the burial site of another. It wasn't the smoking gun, but together, it built a case strong enough to act. On a damp October morning, Peter Harris was pulled over on a quiet Hampshire lane. Officers surrounded his Cortina, ordering him out. Calmly, almost casually, he complied. He didn't resist, didn't panic. He simply asked, "What's this about?" As detectives read the charges, a chilling thought struck them. If they'd waited even one more week, how many more women would he have claimed? Harris denied everything. Polite, soft-spoken, he painted himself as a misunderstood man, a victim of coincidence. But under hours of questioning, cracks appeared. Asked about specific nights, his stories faltered. Pressed about the women's jewelry, he insisted they were gifts from girlfriends, though no names were provided. The more he spoke, the clearer the picture became. A man who thrived on control, but hated being cornered. By late 1980, police finally had their man. But the investigation was far from over. Because while Peter Harris sat in custody, detectives faced a grim reality. Arresting him was one thing. Convicting him, tying him definitively to every murder, was another. And Harris? He wasn't done playing games. The trial of the Hampshire serial killer would reveal horrors no one was prepared to hear. What happens when the mask finally comes off? For years, the Hampshire serial killer had stalked women in the shadows, leaving only fear in his wake. But in the courtroom, there were no woods to hide behind, no fog to melt into. Here, under the harsh light of justice, Peter Harris would be stripped bare, and the world would finally hear the truth. In early 1981, the trial of Peter Harris opened at Winchester Crown Court. The courthouse was packed. Reporters from London, families of the victims, and townsfolk who'd lived under his terror filled every seat. The charges were staggering: multiple counts of murder, attempted abduction, and assault. The prosecution painted Harris as a predator who lived two lives: the helpful tradesman by day and the calculating killer by night. The defense argued the evidence was circumstantial: fibers, soil samples, witness descriptions. Nothing, they claimed, directly tied Harris to the killings. But then came the testimonies. One of the most powerful moments came when Elaine, the woman who had escaped a man in a blue Cortina, took the stand. Her voice trembled as she recounted the night he stalked her, the way his eyes seemed to linger too long, The way his voice turned urgent when she refused a lift. She pointed across the courtroom. "That's him." Another witness described the night she saw Harris loitering near a bus stop, his car idling in the shadows. Piece by piece, the image sharpened. Forensic experts testified that fibers from Harris's car matched clothing of two victims. Soil samples from his wheel arches matched burial sites. Even tiny paint flecks found on a victim's coat matched the cortina. Individually, none of these pieces were definitive. Together, they built a damning mosaic. Throughout the trial, Harris was unervingly calm. He sat upright, hands folded, often scribbling notes. Occasionally, he even smiled. But when the jury was shown the jewelry box found in his trunk, bracelets, earrings, lockets belonging to women who would never wear them again, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. For many in the room, it was the first glimpse of the monster behind the mask. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 2 days. They returned with a verdict that echoed through the silent courtroom. Guilty. Peter Harris was convicted on multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The families wept, some in relief, some in grief renewed. The monster who had haunted Hampshire was finally caged. But closure was complicated. Even as Harris was led away, detectives admitted they could not tie him definitively to every unsolved disappearance in the area. There were whispers of more victims, women who'd vanished without a trace, cases that fit his pattern but lacked evidence. Was the true toll higher? Had Harris killed for longer than anyone realized? The answers may never be known. For Hampshire, the relief was palpable. Women could walk the streets again, though not without glancing over their shoulders. Parents allowed daughters back to pubs, but curfews lingered. The county's innocence was gone forever. The case also left a mark on policing. It highlighted the desperate need for improved forensic techniques, better record-keeping, and national coordination. Within a decade, DNA profiling would emerge, too late for Harris's victims, but vital for those who came after. Psychologists later studied Harris, calling him a textbook predator. Meticulous planning, ability to appear ordinary, a compulsion to keep trophies of his crimes. But what struck them most was his lack of remorse. In interviews, he spoke not of guilt, but of frustration at being caught. Yet amid the darkness, the names of the women endured: Marion Clark, Sarah Milton, and Wilcox, Linda Perry, and others who never returned home. Their stories weren't just footnotes in Harris's cruelty. They were lives, daughters, sisters, friends, stolen but not forgotten. Community groups formed in their honor, advocating for women's safety, pressing police for reform. Their legacy lived not in fear, but in change. The story of the Hampshire serial killer is not just about one man's evil. It is about the fragility of trust, the thin line between safety and terror, and the resilience of a community scarred but unbroken. Because the greatest horror wasn't just the murders themselves. It was realizing that evil didn't wear a mask. It wore the face of the man next door.